Greetings and welcome. My name is Narisa Rashid, and I'm the host of today's ASQ Lean Enterprise Division webinar. We hold these webinars once each month, and they are free to all our members. Our webinars are recorded, so previous webinars are available on the ASQ Lean Enterprise Division YouTube channel. Our topic for July 10th is Project Management Using Visual Management Methods by Frank. Our topic for today, June 10th, the tools of Modular Kaizen, and the presenter is Grace Duffy. Grace has over 40 years of experience in bringing success to businesses via process management in corporate, government, education, and healthcare areas. She has held high positions such as president, CEO, and senior manager in her career and has helped organizations improve. She has authored 13 text, additional book chapters, and many articles on quality, leadership, and organizational performance. She's a frequent speaker and trainer. Grace holds an MBA from Georgia State University. She holds ASQ certs such as CMQOE, CQIA, Green Belt, Quality Auditor. She is also a Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt, an ASQ Fellow, and a Distinguished Service Medalist. Some logistics, everyone will be on mute but you're free to post questions to Presenter Grace as you think of them. Grace has reserved about 10 minutes at the end to answer your questions, which we will take one at a time. And here's Grace Duffy.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, Sarah. And thank you very much for all your help in working with me and getting prepared for this. This presentation is based on a chapter in the textbook of Modular Kaizen that I published, oh goodness, I guess in 2014. Some of you may have already seen this textbook. We are more than happy to share the slides. Nazira and Frank and Hank have put these things on the website that you can take them down with you. Now, the Lean Enterprise Technical Committee has been active in looking at differences and enhancements to Lean tools for some time. So what I wanted to do now was just share some tools that are based off of Lean technology, based off of Lean. Now I'm having a good time because there we go. I wasn't able to change the slides. This is really just a summary of what Nazira told you already. I'm talk too much and I do a lot of certifications. Now, for those of you who have been involved with the Lean Enterprise Division since Tony Manos and Georgia Lucal chartered it, however many years ago when I was chair of the Quality Management Division, you know that they first used this NIST and MEP model for the House of Lean in some of their early writings. And I used this Lean House of Lean model when I first started working with Modular Kaizen, but realized that because I was working with Health and Human Services up on Capitol Hill in a services and a transactional environment, that the wording just didn't quite match with what I was trying to do. Now, Modular Kaizen is really looking at a project-based approach for applying the concepts of Lean. Now, here we see in the standard Lean model, change management is the foundation, and I certainly don't change that at all for Modular Kaizen. After all, life is life, change is change, process improvement is process improvement. So we want to start with change, and then we move into value stream mapping, because that really is the front porch or the step that allows us to see what our gaps are in improvement and figure out how we can choose the right tools to then start closing out those gaps. So you've seen these Kaizen continuous improvement tools, the streamlined layout, batch size reduction, point of use storage, quick changeover, which used to be SMED, I think, in some of the original Lean House of Lean illustrations and where they are. And by the way, Nazira, since I think that if I bring this control panel over, I hope this does not go over onto the slides for the students. This way, if I have the control panel, I can see if there are any questions. If that's an issue, just break in and let me know that I need to remove it. Then the House of Modular Kaizen is basically the same as the House of Lean, and in my mind, it should be. All of you know lean, you are lean practitioners, you know how to look at making our internal processes and our customer facing processes as efficient and as effective as we can. But what I did, and I'll take you through each one of these lean tools, and you can see that they're just numbered simply so I can refer to them on some additional illustrations. I keep change management as the base because really that isn't going to change. And using value stream mapping after we have defined and stabilized our processes, or at least defined them because lean helps us stabilize them, at least define them again is the entry or the front door into any kind of using the lean approach. Now, I use the term modular Kaizen, and I'll define that here in just a moment, because when I was working with Health and Human Services, I was very involved in 2010 and 2011 when Health and Human Services was helping with the H1N1 novel virus, the flu virus that was such an epidemic globally, and also the Haiti earthquakes and the beginnings of the BP oil spill in the Gulf Coast of the Gulf of Mexico. Now, at that point, I was helping Health and Human Services integrate a concept or a culture of quality improvement. They were moving at light speed. People were waving their passports all over the place with the H1N1. One of the biologists, the chief biologist who was on my quality improvement team, was flying back and forth to France because that was where they were finalizing the vaccines. That's where we're finding the new breakthrough improvement that meant that they could create the vaccine without using egg albumin. They found some alternatives for creating the vaccines. Nobody was in the room. So I was really having to run a lot of this process improvement activity and incorporate this culture in a highly interrupt driven environment. And that's when I realized that I needed to look at Kaizen and process improvement in a way that would allow people to move quickly, that we could pick up a project and pick up pieces of what we were doing in our process and do something very quickly, modularize the improvement, and put it down when we had to awful lot. And you'll hear this again when I talk about Kaizen Blitz, not tie people up for huge amounts of time. So modular Kaizen is really a project management approach to the concept of lean that allows us to very quickly get our process improvement activities moving and forward without tying people up for great amounts of time. So I'll take you through each of these different tools here as we go through the presentation. Number one stays as change management. Number two is the value stream mapping, stays as the second or the door into the modular Kaizen staged improvement as well. And then you'll see 3 is 5S4, and I'll take you through the rest of these as we move forward. Now, modular Kaizen is originally was based on the PDCA cycle rather than the DMAIC, although I've converted it to DMAIC, and I'll show that to you in just a bit. The Health and Human Services, the Assistant Secretary for Preparedness and Response, was the admiral I was working with at the time, used the PDCA cycle. So I started with that one, and it still remains probably the most flexible and transportable process improvement model that we have. Although modular Kaizen, just like lean, will work on any kind of improvement model that you have. It really doesn't matter. You'll find that if you look at the modular Kaizen textbook, the generic agenda for a project for a process improvement under modular Kaizen looks suspiciously like Duran's 7-step improvement model. And frankly, it's the same. I'm a degreed anthropologist. Our brains haven't changed for the last 40,000 years. PDCA, DMAIC, Duran, it all seems to work the same way. We're still human beings. Now, what I do in this modular Kaizen flow using PDCA, and it's really obvious, you're looking at 2 cycles of plan, do, check, and act. Generally, what happens is you plan what you're going to do, you do it in the pilot, you check at what you're doing, and that's the cost of appraisal, that's monitoring. And then the act is either lock and load, you abandon, you accept, you adjust, or you abandon what it is you're going to do. Well, with modular Kaizen, as we go through that stage of piloting, or as the operator who is watching and monitoring the activity, the process that we're looking at, if they know so well what should happen in that process, and that's what we want to do in SOPs and work breakdown structures. If we look at that and the person sees what's going on and realizes that something isn't quite right, they are going to experience a disruption. Now that disruption, and you and I know that, we do a double take, we go a say what, that doesn't feel quite right. At that point, you zip out of the upper left-hand cycle of the plan, do, check, act cycle and follow that disruption. That line number 1 on the first arrow there puts us down to a double check. That's the double check of our head just kind of whipping back saying, say what? At that point, when we know the process well enough, we do that instantaneous gap analysis in our minds, because the human brain is still better at seeing patterns than computers are. We do that second check. We go down into that lower right-hand cycle, the check. Now, if it is very fast for us to return into the normal identified process, we're going to make that action, that act, zip down, make that modification. We're to adjust or realize, nah, it's still within the range and boundaries of a control chart. We're still under control. It's reasonable in our variation. We either accept it, we adjust it. Now, if we're going to abandon it, if we're going to need to make a big change, then we would go into replanning and do the full do and the check on the lower right hand if there is a real improvement that is beyond the concept of the existing process. Ordinarily, when our process is somewhat stable, we're going to stop at that lower case, the right side act, and follow line number 2 back over to double check, and then finally line number 3 back into normal operation, which for those of us who know the standardized do, check, act cycle, the SDCA cycle, is the standard function of what we do when we run a process and when we go through monitoring. So that's really the concept of very quickly minimizing disruption, which is the essential purpose of modular Kaizen. So let's look at this for just a minute. Here is the modular Kaizen flow for you. Let's see, there we go. House lead there. That's the one I stuttered, pardon me. Here is the DMAIC process. And the structure is the same. It's just, and I love DMAIC because it pulls out measure. If you can't measure it, you really cannot improve it. You've got to have that measure. And I loved when DMAIC was identified because even though it's the same concept as PDCA, it really encourages us to identify an evaluative, a qualitative approach to our monitoring process. So here with the DMAIC, you have the standard process here, the disruption happens. You go back to the remeasure stage, say what, let me measure, make sure I'm still within variation, acceptable variation. I can analyze what's going on. I can make that improvement. If it's a very fast improvement, I just go in and I'm still within constant, within variation of acceptable variation, process is still stable, go back up and then keep moving in what I'm doing. If not, if I really need more of an improvement, then I will stay down in the real improvement corrective action process here under the modular Kaizen. When I'm comfortable with it, with that improvement, then I go back up and then I go into standardization again. And here you'll see the options between accept the issue, adjust it, or abandon it. So it doesn't really matter whether you use PDCA or if you use the DMAIC process. Now, if you look at change management, and let's look at the tools now 1 through 17. Change management here, and all I did, because it doesn't matter in my mind which change management module you want to use. Here is Kotter's change management module. Certainly, we see the need for change. We change the direction. We change the behavior. Here is the old concept of change what you do, and it will change the behavior and the culture of the organization. And then you change the sustainability, and that is the ongoing cycle here for those of you who are aware of Kotter's model. Now, many of us were first schooled on Kurt Levin's change theory of the unfreezing and the changing and the refreezing. It doesn't matter whichever one you're comfortable with. Again, our brains are going to go through the same way. It just depends on the different terminology. So really, change management doesn't, I haven't modified change management at all. Heaven forbid it works, go for it. Now, at that point, we get into the value stream mapping. Now, all of us have seen the standard Quality 101 value stream illustration that's in the CQIA handbook. This is one that a Lean Six Sigma group or a University of Central Florida group for which I was a master black belt mentor did some years ago. And all of you know value stream mapping. I'm not going to take you through this. All it is the Department of Children and Families in Florida was not able to get electronic benefits transfer or food stamps to mothers with dependent children quickly enough. So we did a value stream map on the process and realized that we needed to get more phone lines into the building, into the DCF building, so that mothers could put calls in to get their applications more quickly. But you're aware of the value stream map and how that works. So I won't take you through the details. If you're interested, get hold of me and I'll take you through this illustration in the future and just show you what we did. Now, 3, the 5S system. Again, I'm not going to change 5S. It works fine. Nazira reminded me that certainly, and I've known this from my work with NASA, that we've gone from 5S now to 6S to add the safety. And now I understand that we're going to 7S for security. I'm going to let other authors decide whether we want to really change the name of the tool to 6S or 7S. I'm happy with 5S, and then we do what we need to do as lean practitioners. So certainly that is still very, very important in reducing disruption. It's not only important, it's really valuable because that's getting the solid platform. As well, and we'll see this a little bit later, lean is really the precursor for Six Sigma or any reduction of variation. You've got to get the process stable to begin with. All right, I'll get off my soapbox. I can tell I just started to preach. Now, here is one that a colleague and I, Jack Moran, put together when we were doing some work with Public Health Foundation for the public health service in the United States. What we want to do here is identify any disruptions. And if this looks a lot like the failure mode and effects analysis tool, well, yep, you're really observant that is true. This is an example of Thunder Bay District Health Unit in Ontario in Canada with work that I was doing with ASQ some years ago in oral health checks. Registered nurses in Ontario go into the schools every year and check the students' teeth. Now, this just showed us what could go wrong with tooth checks. So this particular process, this particular chart looks at the process and activity as well. In FMEA, we do that. What is the disruption? In what way is the activity impacted? What is the impact of the disruption? We looked at what the customer requirements are. How severe is the impact? What causes the activity to go wrong? What are the existing controls? What actions for reducing the occurrence or cause? What controls or measures will effectively prevent? Who's responsible? And what are completed? We don't do the RPN. We just made it very quick for people who were not going to spend a lot of their life working with FMEAs. And that's really, really what we did here. All we really use is the priority activity here for the disruption identification. In this particular example, one thing that could go wrong is that if the nurse who saw that there was a problem with its student's teeth filled out the tooth check card that goes home to the parents, they might not have written a clear explanation that the parents would understand. And so the impact of the disruption is that the customer's not sure what I do. Okay, you tell me there's something wrong, but what do I do? What's the priority? Well, if the parents are confused, that's not really good. Let's make it at 8. It's what's the potential cause? Unclear information confuses the parent. How is it managed? Right now, the parent just go back and ask or give feedback at a later step of the process. What would be good is if the RNs would follow up with an email or a letter asking if the parent was clear on the options, especially if the parent didn't come back within a reasonable amount of time to have the student cared for. And what were the performance measures, two-way validated communication, who was the owner, the process owner, who was the RN at that point for the public health department, and then how did we take actions, and we did focus groups and pilot and feedback. So that's the disruption identification form that allows us, again, to identify the priority barriers to address. It helps us in Lean to focus down on, as Joanne called, those vital few activities with what we're trying to do. Tool number 8, I'm not going to get away from the 8 types of waste. Now with the 5S, I left it at 5S. I didn't move it to 6S. I'm showing you a bias on the part of Grace Duffy. So Gospel According to Grace said, I absolutely adore that we added the waste of people and not using a valuable mind. So you just caught me on this one. Instead of using the 7 wastes, I love the 8 one because I really adore that we worry about using people inappropriately. So again, I won't take you through all these wastes, but that certainly is something we want to consider no matter what we do in Modular Kaizen. Kaizen. Now, 6 is a different use of the Ishikawa or fishbone or cause and effect diagram. In the Modular Kaizen textbook, there is a whole chapter on what I call the school of fishbones. We've identified, Jack Moran and I put together, even before I put out the Modular Kaizen book and some work that we were doing with Public Health Foundation, 5 different modifications of the cause and effect diagram. And one of them is this force and effect plus the CA chart. What happens here is that you'll see the standard fishbone process. And certainly we use just the standard 4Ms or whatever you want to use. In this particular example, in healthcare, what we have is a disruptive state, the massive power outage in a hospital. Now, in the force and effect chart, rather than have the issue here in the nose of the fish, we go to what is the intended outcome. And the current stable state is the hospital is operating normally, even though we may be running off of generators. We've had an electrical outage of some sort. So you do the standard brainstorming of the employees or the team members on what could go wrong. Well, and we then affinitized the different issues. We don't have any elasticity. We need to secure some fuel supply. The temperature is rising in the building. It's discomfort. There's discomfort with the heat. Many of you remember when there was a hurricane several years ago that hit the Gulf Coast, that we lost some hospital patients because the electricity was out and the heat was just too great. Well, here we are. This is exactly what we've run into and this example was out of a hospital in Boston. So we have issues with patients and issues with the operating room. What happens on this particular chart is just like a force field analysis, we move the issue over to, in this case, the right side of the main fishbone of the different themes of the issue of no electricity in the hospital. And then on the left-hand side, we come in with what do we check for based on the temperature in the building increase, and then what would the action be? And so let's take this example. If the electricity has gone out, the temperature in the building is increasing, what would we check for? We would check for hotspots. Then what would our actions potentially be? And this is going to be a great communication tool for your team to figure out some options on where you could go, not just for root cause analysis, but for immediate corrective action and then rolling into preventive action. Certainly shade the windows, deploy fans, secure an ice supply. Here's another one in the OR in the operating room. There are some cases in rooms that don't have any power because the generators can't manage all of the operating rooms. So you check who are the rooms without power. Well, stop any new surgeries, transfer cases into the operating rooms that do have power under generator, and then communicate with the relatives so you manage and share with the stakeholders what's going on. Okay, I probably bored you to death with this one, but do you see what the force and effect plus CA chart is? Now, there are 3 different kinds of measures, and this is the trimetric matrix. And this is an example of a board of directors meeting, again, with the Thunder Bay District Health Unit in Ontario. We brought in the council, the board of directors for the TBDHU, and what they wanted to do was handle their board meetings more effectively. So we set up an evaluation by the board members on one of the board meetings. And a colleague of mine, many of you know Elizabeth Burns out of Guelph, Canada. Elizabeth and I were working with ASQ at TBDHU up in Thunder Bay, Ontario. Oh, that was really fun in February. For those of you on the call from Canada, it was just delightful. I live in Florida. But really, the capacity, process, and outcome are the 3 kinds of measures that you want to make sure your process approaches. So we have the trimetric in capacity was an indicator of the capacity of this particular board meeting. Okay, this example is we covered the agenda completely. What is the definition of that indicator? Items to be covered during a single board meeting are all addressed by consensus of the board. Again, your team has identified and defined what that indicator means. What is our baseline? Here, and this one came from 2012, the agenda of the last boarding was covered, 100% of priority items and 67% of non-essential items, because most of us know in meetings you don't always get it all done. And then what is the improvement target? We're going to try and get to 100% of everything. So here, and then we have process process measures, the board meeting agenda is managed according to defined policy and procedure. And then the outcome, board members and company executive participants make effective decisions. So these three different types of measures are going to keep you on track with the SOPs and with the expectations of your customers. So this form always helped us really define our terms and understand where we're going. Now, essential team characteristics, and many of you, again, who have worked with me and with Russ Westcott in the Guide to Process Improvement and Change and some of the training we do with ASQ will probably recognize this chart. There are essential team characteristics that we want to employ or at least look for as we bring teams in for continuous improvement and for project and process teamwork. So here we want to make sure when we're working in Modular Kaizen that we get the right people on the team. And because these people aren't going to be there for a long term to be trained and to be mentored as we do in long-term green belt or Six Sigma projects that may last a good 6 months. What we really want in Modular Kaizen is to get people in the team who can hit the ground running. So a lot of times as a project leader in a Modular Kaizen process, I will meet with the team members individually before we ever have our kickoff meeting. And the sponsor and I and the team leader will make sure that we understand the reason initially for choosing those team members. A lot of Modular Kaizen is project management, and so much of it is the planning. Phil Crosby was exactly right. You want to plan it first significantly so that you know you're going to do it right the first time. So these are the different characteristics. Have a common purpose with the team members. Make sure we understand roles and responsibilities. Incorporate trust very, very quickly. Certainly we need to have processes, procedures. We need to be clear about the results. We also need to be aware of the growth ability, growth potential for the individuals on the team. I won't go through these details. You're going to download these slides and have them on your own. This slide is also further explained in the Executive Guide to Improvement and Change. The ninth tool is project management. All of you know a lot about project management. All of you are quite aware of those activities. So I just simply give you a definition that comes out of the Evans and Lindsay Management and Control of Quality. Fantastic book. Jim Evans and Bill Lindsay have been updating this book for years. It's not only an excellent graduate text for quality and quality management and industrial engineering. I've also used it in a technical college as a quality 101 course. It's just phenomenal. So what we want to do in project management, involving all activities associated with planning, scheduling, and controlling projects. Here we go. Project management, Modular Kaizen really hits the second sentence. Good project management ensures that an organization's resources are used efficiently and effectively. One of my terms with Modular Kaizen is that the facilitator for a Modular Kaizen project needs to be either a Dumbledore or a Gandalf. You really need to put the effort in beforehand so that you understand where the project's going. You need to stay involved in some way all the time. It is a heavy responsibility for the facilitator. It is not one of those facilitation issues where you can spend an hour before the meeting where you hand all of the materials or all the management to the team leader. Modular Kaizen really assumes that the facilitator is actively involved every bit as much as the team leader, if not more. Now, the Kaizen Blitz still exists. Even though in Modular Kaizen, I'm trying to get away from it, there were times, certainly with Health and Human Services, when the chief biologist and I had to sit down and figure out, what do we really need to do? Who needs to be where? Am I going to need to be up at 1 o'clock in the morning in France to be with the team at 11 o'clock or at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I guess, in Washington, D.C., to really hammer something out. So Kaizen Blitz is still there. That's that rapid improvement. The illustrations here are just me, because to me, the Kaizen Blitz is when you lock the right people in the room and you shove pizza under the door and you have coffee intravenously. So that's really why the illustrations here. Kaizen Blitz is something there when you positively absolutely cannot move any further forward until you solve initial problem. Hey, we've got to recognize that that's there. So I am going to include Kaizen Blitz as one of the tools of Modular Kaizen. Kaizen. 11, error proofing. All of you know about error proofing. We certainly want to manage error proofing, even more importantly in Modular Kaizen, because we want to be able to get to it quickly. Make sure, just as that earlier disruption identification form, that you absolutely know how you're planning it right to begin with. You are anticipating what can go wrong, and you are designing your project as well as your process as well as you can to begin with. And that's, again, why you want to have the team members able to hit the ground running right off, because you need to get these things done during the planning phase rather than wait and kind of fumble through it during the pilot phase. That forming, storming, norming, and performing. The forming is really, really critical, so you can get through the storming relatively quickly, or at least in a very prescribed way. Of course, again, coming back to Phil Crosby, coming back to that cost of quality, coming back to his do it right the first time, a lot of Feigenbaum's work comes through at the quality at the source. Again, I had just the idea of the horses going out at the gate. You've got to be able to get out of the gate quickly. With Crosby, do it right the first time. Get this quality source. This is the lean manufacturing. This is the original do it right the first time activity. Process control, you all know it. You're better than I am at statistics, but we still need to make sure we have the data. We need to watch it. We need to get the qualitative evaluation. We need to know not only run charts. Now, this blue run chart comes from the Quality 101 activities that Tim King has written into the Quality Foundations course for CQIA Review Guide. We have what you know as the M&M activity, where you give the students a bag of M&Ms and you count the number of blue ones. You also count the number of defects and the total number in the bag. Absolutely. Aside, over the 3 years that I have been, 3 or 4 that I have been doing this activity, since the M&M Mars company sold out to Nestle, I have even seen during this activity in Quality 101 that the quality and the consistency of the number of M&Ms in the bag and the reduction in defects in the bag has improved. It's really amazing. I should use the data from our class to send it to Nestle. It has been really, really fun to watch. So Modular Kaizen uses process control. We have to do qualitative as well as quantitative. And certainly I'm excited because the Duran trilogy is exactly Modular Kaizen. Plan what you're going to do, monitor and control it, and then with the gap, do your quality improvement. Fast transition, this one I absolutely adore. This is single minute exchange of dies. Plan it. How are you going to transfer? One of the things that the statistics division talks about all the time is that really the risk is in the handoffs. The risk is in the transition from one process to the other. Modular Kaizen wants to anticipate that, and you modularize the project tasks that you're working on very well so that you know exactly what you're going to close out one project task with, so that when you pick up at the next team meeting or the next cross-functional or interspatial activity, that you know exactly that you've given the person the information they need and they can pick it up and run with it very, very quickly. So that, again, is something that we have used and changed from the manufacturing terminology into more a services and a transactional term. The pull technology, what can I say? All of us have it. I just pulled this picture off the internet. We certainly in lean want to do pull. We want to limit our inventory to reduce our expenses and tying up our cash. We want to be customer oriented. We want to improve certainly cash flow, and we want to make to order that batch of one as much as possible. The old push system was great when we had the huge batch systems, when we really had the amount of inventory and cash to be able to take those economies of scale. In a lean environment, we really want to be on that pull system side. 16, Modular Kaizen looks at that modular flow. If I can look at task 1 and identify what I do in task 1A and task 1B, that exactly I can hand off and identify the information quickly, but also make sure that I don't lose anything in the transition. Here we go. Then task 2A, 2B, somebody grabs it, they hand off. These task members can go off and do absolutely what they need to go. They're free. They can go back to what they need to do. Now realize that the facilitator is watching all of this. The Gandalf or Dumbledore is watching with their magic wand and they're watching in the mirror of Galadriel or whatever it is, that everything's working. But the task due hands off to task 3, and we get the designed result. Again, modularizing activities so that it's faster. We can pick it up, set it down. People can go off, get what they need to do. When it's time to pick it back up again, they can come back quickly, and we don't have that tremendous pickup time and drop transition time. And then finally, with daily work management, this is again something that I picked up out of the daily management system illustrations. Daily work management looks at what we do every day, and we want to make sure that Modular Kaizen is creating process systems, work breakdown structures, SOPs that identify and are aligned with the key performance indicators of the organization. Everything we do, and as well you know in Lean, everything we do in the day-to-day activity must align to the overall goals of the organization. Otherwise, why are we doing it? That's the whole concept of 5S. That's the concept of alignment. That's the concept of lean systems, not necessarily lean tools. We want to make sure that every area is ready to get the work done. We need to understand the concepts and tools of problem solving. There are, yes, the quick hits, and certainly we want those. The 5S is sort of a quick hit, but we also have those larger, that's the big QI and the little QI that Dr. Duran talks about. The little QI are the things we do right there in daily work management. But we need to understand that those little QI activities really need to roll up and support those bigger, those pernicious issues, those system issues. And then it ties it all up into communication, into what we're doing. So those are really the full components of the daily management system. What I did out of those 17 tools using the plan, do, check, act cycle. Now, this is not to say you can't use the tools anytime they make sense for you. The lean tools, there are no, I keep telling my friends, there are no tools police. Use the tools and they work for you. However, just as a thought of where would these tools really work? Well, certainly if we're going to come into the structure of the organization, we come in here as the environment. Certainly change management is the foundation of lean and what we do. We need teams to help us throughout the whole process. Project management, you know, that's my platform here, is so critical, and we need to be aware that anything we suggest needs to integrate into what we're asking our people to do day to day. Now, during the plan, do, check, act cycle, if you were going to look at some of the tools of Modular Kaizen, when you're planning, certainly that value stream mapping gives you the current state. Then the disruption identification tool helps you identify what can go wrong, what has gone wrong. That's the CAPA, that's the Kappa kind of concept. Trimetric matrix, you need to understand what your measurements are going to be, how you're going to build those measurements, and how you're going to watch for them. And you're going to look at those KPIs, and you're going to look at how you're going to put process controls in place, because you're going to have to come over here and monitor it for the long term. Then we're going to transition down into the do or the pilot phase. Here, if you are absolutely at wit's end, the Kaizen Blitz is going to be in there. Certainly you want to look at how you're piloting for error proofing. Certainly you want to start your improvements with quality at the source. You don't want to just fumble through it. Fast transition, you want to set up your teams and your project activities and the process tasks so that you can move quickly from one to the other. And then you need to modularize them as in as small an orientation or as a configuration as you can. Then we come over here into the check phase. Here, the 5S can also be helpful in making sure that you have eliminated as much as possible. As you know, very often we look for effectiveness first and then efficiency. Well, here is where you're going to go for the efficiency. Now, I can argue that you do 5S up here and plan as well at the same time you're doing value stream mapping. I just happen to stick it here because I want to get into that efficiency after we do the effectiveness. The 8-way, certainly, again, for the same reason. What did we forget? What did we miss? Force and effect plus the check and act. Are we addressing all the issues? Are there any issues we need to adjust? Anything we need to abandon? Was our idea initially incorrect and we need to go back and redo it? The trimetric dashboard is coming in with the final key performance indicators, and then process control really has to be here because you're doing the check that's going to lead into the eventual ongoing monitoring with what you're doing in the act and what I call the lock and load of acting, the documentation, getting this into new employee orientation, or finalizing standard operating procedures and what you're doing. Not only was I happy about doing this with with a PDCA. I also put the same concept together in a slightly different format for the DMAIC process in organizational excellence. Here is the overall organizational design for DMAIC that comes out. I think the Harrington organization. Certainly the change management is the way into DMAIC. Again, value stream mapping, disruption identification. I use teams and project management here in the overall organizational excellence form or location, and then process control, Metric dashboard, analyze, figuring out where your issues really are, the improvement tools, and then back into those control and monitoring tools in what happens here. Here is the House of Modular Kaizen, just as a wrap up of where we are. So we've got the 17 different tools. I've shared them with you. We will have some conversation here, and I am more than happy to answer any questions. The other thing that I will share when I talk about the force and effect and cause check act item, if any of you are interested, and I'm happy to make this offer to the Lean Enterprise Division, I do have a training module on the School of Fishbones, the 5 modifications of the cause and effect diagram that Jack Moran and I put together some years ago. And if you're interested, I'm willing to share that with you. Happy to do that at any time. So if you are interested in learning more, if you want to get hold of me, by all means, this is my email address. This is my cell phone number. If you're interested in more information about ASQ, some of the different topics, obviously we know the Knowledge Center is there. If you're interested in the bookstore, I know that the Lean Enterprise Division has webcasts. ASQ has many of the ones that Pablo Baez has monitored, and the Quality Management Division also has a significant number of webcasts available for you. What I'm going to do is hand this back then to Nazira, and she can monitor any calls or questions that we have. What time is it? It is, here we go. It took us, what, 40 minutes? So we've got about 10, 15 minutes if you'd like to talk. I'm going to let Nazira handle this. Nazira, how do I handle this back to you? Give the keyboard and mouse. Where do you want?
You're fine, Grace. You're fine the way you are. I can just read out the questions to you so you can answer them. We have a question here. What is the right approach shine in 5S? Product flow is visible, then we can control it effectively and then improve speed flow. It's not about cleaning the job area, right? Cleaning is surely assured for safety and product preservation. Is not the
no, it's not just manufacturing. Let me wander back to the 5S. No, you're right. 5S, certainly we do. As a matter of fact, ASQ teaches a one-day 5S workshop that we will come on site and help you with 5S. Certainly you can go into a manufacturing organization and you can use the 5S. But no, you're right. It is much more conceptual. What are we going to do? And we can 5S our own brains. We can sort the information and how we look at it. We can straighten up our ideas. Shine, yes, certainly you want to clean up anything that's left. The sort is just what can you throw away to begin with? What's left is put it where it belongs, a place for everything in its place. The shine, yes, is just clean up what's there and dust it off so you can use it. The standardize is that standard operating procedure, and sustain is the monitoring. You're right. It is a much broader approach than just cleaning up the concrete floor. I agree.
There's one more question here. They really like the concepts, the way you organize them. Wanted to know, he's not sure of the significance of the term modular. It seems you're connecting tools, so that they want you to expand on this.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, the tools are only a very small portion of Modular Kaizen. The modular piece is really the concept that when we are so busy at work, when we really don't have time for a 4-hour team meeting every week to address an issue, we need to modularize those improvement activities so that we get the right people working at that stage of the project at the right time to get the next stage of improvement identified quickly and then release them back into the daily work management and daily workflow. So modular is not really that the tools are modularized. Modular Kaizen is that the the continuous improvement within the organization is modularized so that people are as effective as they can in their daily management, and that we are still able to integrate improvement activities in between without getting too many people in the room and wasting a lot of people's time.
Thanks, Grace. We have one more here.
Sure.
We're good on time. So if we were to sell the modular Kaizen to the senior management, what specific benefits would modular approach present versus the standard Kaizen?
Ooh, nice question. I like that. Thank you. Uh, to me, when I was talking to the two-star admiral about modular Kaizen and why she then encouraged it in a video to World Conference in, I think, 2014, is because what we're doing is making sure that her key employees, the people, because when you think about an improvement project, your subject matter experts are the ones who know best what the process is. Those are exactly the people who are trying to resolve the H1N1 flu virus. They're exactly the people who are over in Haiti trying to support the people who have been damaged by the earthquake, or they're exactly the very people who have lost their ability to go shrimp fishing down in the Gulf because of the BP oil spill. Those same people are the ones who know the job so well that you need to pull them out to talk about improving that process so that it can be even more effective. So what you're doing is saying to senior management, I'm going to increase the ability of your senior productive employees, your specialists, to be available to you to get the job done, but also we are able to use sort of spare cycles or grab cycles as we can very quickly to get even better performance out of your organization. We are going to get out, we're literally leaning out the cycle time of improvement within your organization.
Thanks, Grace. We have one more here. When we mention Lean or Six Sigma to the people on the floor, they think layoff. How do you change that mentality?
Ooh, good point. And that is a cultural issue. Totally agree. Now it's interesting that you say that because it's unfortunate. We did get the layoff piece in the 1990s and the early 2000s. Actually, we got it 2005 to 2008, unfortunately, and then on into 2010 when we had the recession, the bad recession. In the last 3 and 4 years, when I work with organizations, I am not seeing that they're reducing headcount after we have leaned out or reduced variation. All that does is allow the people to get to those pieces on their to-do list that they haven't been able to get to. It's not that we're able to reduce full-time equivalent anymore. People are just loving that we can return some people so that they can then use those full-time equivalents on other activities that they've had to put on the shelf that they're hurting really bad about because they haven't been able to do. So if we can share that message with employees now, and also we need to be real clear with the executives that if they are approaching this, as you have said, as a way to reduce their headcount, we need to be real clear that culturally they are going to shoot themselves in the foot, that we do not ever want to do that anymore. We must not, because we have learned that lesson, that the employees must learn that it is not layoff. If we do, you're right, we've shut ourselves down.
Thanks, Grace. Can we take a few more, or are we?
Of course I can. No, we're
Okay.
good.
Okay, thanks. They're confused about the word modular and modularized. Can you elaborate on that, please?
Oh, okay. And that's a good point. Maybe I'm using modular or modularized twice. To me, if you think of a modular home or if you think of modular furniture, they are pieces that are put together almost like, what are those? What are those little blocks that people put together? I just had a senior moment where you have little building blocks and you put them all together and you make little transformers make out of them. I really, forgive me, I am on a webinar and I have lost a word. But when you put different pieces together and together they create a larger component.
A structure?
At that point, yes, a structure, but there's also a little child's game that uses them, and I forget what they are. I just can't remember the name.
logo or log's
Yeah,
name?
Legos,
Lego.
got it. Thank you,
Okay.
Legos.
Oh,
If you think of Legos, a
uh-huh.
project is like a bunch of Legos, and
Uh,
a facilitator and team leader have to look at the individual tasks. It's like when you put a Gantt chart together. You think
uh-huh,
about what do we do, or when you put a work breakdown structure together, you are
uh-huh.
modularizing. You're using modules of the process. You are making smaller pieces of that greater whole. And that's what I have in mind when I talk about modular or when I modularize a project. I take those smaller pieces because those smaller pieces can be sub-processes, they can be tasks within processes, they can be the things that we call a work breakdown structure or the tasks that we put into a Gantt chart. And those are the pieces that you want to have so small that they are maybe individual components of improvement, so that overall you're going to get that concept of Kaizen, slow and good and improvement, but you aren't going to be tying up significant members of your organization for long periods of time. So that concept of modular for me says little small pieces of improvement that the facilitator and the team leader manage on an ongoing basis, so that it frees up the team members to do their daily work and they aren't tied up in large amounts of time with the improvement project.
Few more we
Ask
have.
me again about that. Yeah, come back after me on that if I still haven't done it.
Thanks, Grace. Uh, are we good on time? Shall we continue?
Sure, if there are more, let's
Okay.
go for it.
We have quite a few last minutes on here.
Sure.
Okay. How can we keep from bogging down the process of change management from low risk takers?
How can we ask that again?
How can we keep from bogging down the process of change management from low risk takers?
Oh, good point. Good point. And I have run into this, frankly, very, very close in my own community. There are some things that we can do. If the low risk taker is the team leader, that's a huge problem. Then you need to have a conversation with the sponsor and the champion and really understand the champion and the sponsor's need and the timeline and the impact of the team leader or the facilitator being a low risk taker. If now the other piece is that part of your initial planning in the charter and identifying the team to begin with is whether the sponsor is a low risk sponsor. If that be the case, then you just need to realize that that's what you've got going in, and you're going to have to define it and be aware of it. If you get team members who are low risk takers, then you want to use that low risk to assign them to activities that may be very, very critical, but they might be repetitive. They might be ones that do have a low risk factor to them, so that if you were to do an FMEA on your activities, they would be the ones that have a lower impact if something goes wrong. If you really do want to find out from your team members who are the high risk takers, the sort of medium risk takers, and the low risk takers, you need to also watch the high risk takers, because you don't want them running off on you when they have not had an adequate view of where you're going with the project. You need to look at all of your team members. In Modular Kaizen, and I've tried this out with NASA out in the Space Coast with one of my colleagues, that you need to be really careful and meet your team members before you ever charter the team, to know who's who before you're going in, or you will run into that issue. Because yes, low risk takers will bog down the change management. High risk takers, if they are not good communicators, will also get you into areas where you're running off the gangplank and you don't have your controls in place first. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox. You hit a really good comment that I've run into. All right, back to you, Nazira.
So we have one more here in continuation of that. What is the risk of Kaizen Blitz becoming the norm rather than the desperate, in a corner, urgent approach?
That's a good point. If you have, okay, this is only gospel according to grace, so let me be careful with that one. Where I have run into clients or organizations that I have been involved with, if lean and Six Sigma are only there, and Kaizen Blitz, okay, that's got to be lean. If lean is only there because the CEO or the quality assurance vice president has played golf with somebody else who's using lean and they love it and they pick it up because that's something they want to talk about on the cocktail service. It's possible that Kaizen Blitz would become the norm because they think that that's what's supposed to happen, because they don't really understand the implications of what each of these tools provides the organization. What we know at the daily management level and at the quality professional level is the real understanding of each of these tools. Us as integrating into the daily work, and this again is going to get me on my soapbox, so I'll try really hard not to do that. If we as quality professionals have integrated ourselves into operations and have the level of trust we should as ASQ quality professionals, we can short circuit the misuse of Kaizen Blitz by suggesting alternative approaches that will still get to the goal of kappa or whatever it is in the same time frame with less impact to the organization. We can help to ameliorate that just by integrating ourselves into that conversation early on.
Okay, I'll take the last one here. Thanks, Grace.
Sure.
How is modular design different from kata? How is modular design different from kata is the question here.
That's a very good question. It is very similar. It is very similar. Modular Kaizen really, I worked on Modular Kaizen in 2010, 2011, 2012, before kata was really incredibly visible in the United States. Now, for those who had been over to Japan and who were using the Japanese term and had brought it over, you may already have seen it, but it had not been publicized and had not been really spread out and popularized as much in the United States. I have seen kata now, and there is a large overlap to it. Now, Modular Kaizen is not based off kata because I pretty much developed it on my own before the kata was really popularized inside the United States. Now, I say my own, what it is. I mean, you look at this thing. I looked at lean, I looked at the tools of lean, and then use them in environments that were very, very highly interruptible and fast paced. Kata also does that. So yes, there's a large overlap. You're smart to see the ramifications.
We have quite a few questions, but I don't think we'll be able to accommodate everyone. I really appreciate those are really good questions. At the same time, we do have Grace's contact information in the handouts that you
Yes,
might
I'm
have
getting back
downloaded.
to it now because there we go. Let me get back to that one and then you've got it.
Yeah.
All right, nope. Got to the wrong place. All right, let me come over here. My computer has decided I've got messages. All right, if you've got then my email address and my cell phone, I'd rather you email me on questions just simply because I'm going to be in and out of the office, but even cell phone and I can call you back when I have time. I'm happy to answer the questions and I'll just do it over email.
Oh, okay, I appreciate Grace. I would like to wrap this up now. I would like to thank Grace for taking her time to share with us so very important and interesting information that can be applied to any business organization and share the real-time application and experience. As I said earlier, Grace's presentation is now recorded and will be posted on the ASQ Lean Division YouTube channel later this week. I want to remind you that July's topic is project management using visual management methods. Thanks to everyone for participating in today's webinar. Have a great day. Thanks, Grace.
Thank you, Nazira.
Thanks.